Happy Friday, everybody. We are here to talk about Julio Jones today. So this is going to be fun. A lot of the times, a lot of these rumors I find to be not even worth discussing, but Kyle Shanahan has told us in the past that this is a rumor worth discussing. I still remember the day, the time. It was at Indianapolis in the convention center at the combine in 2018. The topic of Julio Jones came up. I'm not sure why, but I still remember Kyle Shanahan saying, if a guy like Julio becomes available, the cost doesn't matter. You figure out a way to go and get him. And not enough has changed in the 3 years since then about Julio Jones' game. I mean, this guy is still in the top five. I would even say top three. This includes last year in receiver efficiency if you look at the advanced numbers. When Julio Jones is healthy, he's still a special talent that is very familiar with Kyle Shanahan's scheme. He would know it from day one. The 49ers are absolutely interested in Julio Jones because he is available. The Falcons have made him available for a trade. Everybody in the NFL knows that. There was another article confirming that in the Athletic just 2 days ago, maybe no, it was yesterday, I believe. And today I wrote the piece and co-wrote it with a few other of our NFL team writers about what the 49ers might be able to offer in a trade and what other teams might be able to offer in a trade. So I'm actually going to share that link with you so you have a chance to check it out. I'm going to put that in the chat window right here. It's funny because uh, our Falcons writer was also in on this, and our Falcons writer determined whether or not the trade offers were feasible enough for the Falcons to actually trade Julio Jones. So if you click on that article, I put the link in there. It's still the $1 a month deal. You'll see if the Falcons actually accepted my trade offer. And I'll go ahead and tell you what my trade offer was. Mine was a conditional second round pick, and then one of the 49ers two third round picks in 2022 because remember they have two of those after the Robert Saleh, Martin Mayhew departures. The 49ers got an extra compensatory pick there in the third round. And based on everything that Kyle Shanahan has said, the 49ers treat those third round picks as found money. So they essentially have two third round picks in that 2022 season. Why not, take advantage of that and use one of them to sweeten a potential deal for Julio Jones? My big thing, though, is that financially it's just not possible for the 49ers the way that Julio Jones' contract is currently structured. And with the 49ers sitting at only about 11 or $12 million in salary cap space after they signed their draft class. Julio alone, his base salary would be about 11 million for the 49ers to absorb this year. So somehow, some way, the 49ers would have to make some room. They don't have much restructuring wiggle room left on the roster. Obviously, Jimmy Garoppolo is the big name there that they might be able to do some maneuvering with, but for all intents and purposes, they want to keep Jimmy Garoppolo. So a restructure there would also be further down on their list of ways they want to handle this. So I think that if they could get the Falcons to eat some of Julio Jones' salary, which the Falcons might be amenable to if they like the draft compensation coming back their way, and then the 49ers would be able to do this and they'd be able to fit Julio Jones into their cap situation comfortably. And then you have to remember the cap is set to explode in 2023. So you have to look at any financial maneuverings at this point in time for the 49ers as bridge maneuverings. They have to build a bridge to when that new TV deal for the NFL kicks in 2023. If they could cross that bridge in time and safely financially, then I think they should be okay 2023 and beyond when that cap just explodes. But they have to get from this point to that point, and you utilize some of the tricks, right? You have to be willing to dig into the pockets. You have to be willing to shell out some guaranteed money. You have to be able to be willing and able to restructure some deals. And then you hopefully push enough of the costs down the road to a time when there is a lot more cap space available. So I think it's all about building a bridge for the 49ers. And as they build that bridge, they're trying to maximize their chances of contention in the short term. And let's face it, there is no better option out on the market. There is no better rookie option, I think, right now for just that 2021 season. Julio Jones is still one of the top receivers in all football. He dealt with a hamstring injury last season, only played 9 games, but he was still electric in those 9 games. He's been the most efficient wide receiver in football for the 5 or 6 seasons before that. The guy's consistent. You know what you're going to get. Kyle Shanahan knows what he's going to get. There's a reason why Kyle Shanahan said that no matter what the cost, if this guy becomes available, you try to go and get him. And I think it's a no-brainer. I think the 49ers are obviously going to be in the mix. I don't know if they're going to land him. I don't know if it's going to happen, but we do know that the Falcons are shopping him because the Falcons have no cap space. They have absolutely nothing. They're like the 94 49ers, not as far as team quality goes, but as far as they have to make maneuvers just to be able to pay their draft class. I mean, right now, they don't have enough space to pay the guys that they picked. The 1994 49ers, when the salary cap first came out, they were in a similar situation. They drafted, an impressive class that year. Obviously, they had some rookies that contributed right away. One of them was Bryant Young, but they couldn't get them under contract until they traded Bill Romanowski before that season, the old linebacker, to Philadelphia. And that actually opened up enough cap space for the 49ers to sign the rookies. So Atlanta's in a similar predicament. They only have about, the 49ers also are in the same kind of situation with, if they needed more cap space, they're running out of deals to restructure and areas where they could squeeze out more space from the roster. Well, the Falcons are in that situation. The 49ers are, except with like 11 million fewer dollars. So they're right at zero. And they've basically narrowed it down to Grady Jarrett, the defensive tackle who really wrecked the 49ers in 2019, and Julio Jones. Those are the two contracts that Atlanta feels that it could scrounge some money out of. So they may, if they're not blown away by a trade offer for Julio Jones, the Falcons may just turn around and extend Grady Jarrett, find a way to find some short-term money through that deal, through a big signing bonus or whatnot, and use that money to sign their draft class. But according to Jeff Schultz, who writes for us at The Athletic, who wrote a great piece about this, they haven't started contract extension talks with Grady Jarrett yet. So you would think if Atlanta was going to go the Grady Jarrett route to save money, that talks would have already begun, right? So that's what led Jeff Schultz to believe that Julio Jones trade might be on the horizon sooner than people might expect, and it could happen as early as June 2nd, because trading Julio Jones before June 1st makes no sense for Atlanta. It'd actually be more expensive to trade him for cap purposes than to keep him. They have to do it after June 1st. And that's coming up. We're already in late May right now, so it's definitely something to keep an eye out for as the 49ers enter OTAs. And I'm really excited about that next week. Let's take a look at some of your questions about this situation. Kind of related because of the cap implications, but have you heard anything about Richard Sherman coming back? It's still possible. The problem with projecting that right now, and I think that Richard Sherman ran into this issue earlier in the offseason, is the 49ers are in a tight cap situation where they're obviously still able to maneuver, but they're putting some stuff like a potential reunion with Richard Sherman on the back burner for later in the offseason because of stuff like this. I mean, first, the 49ers had to get a lot of business done in free agency, and obviously they were able to get that business done in free agency. All the while, they had a budget to keep Jimmy Garoppolo on their roster and to fit his $26.4 million 2021 cap hit. And the 49ers accomplished that even while trading up to number 3. And you have to remember that number 3 pick is very, very pricey compared to the number 12 pick. I mean, it's almost twice as expensive. It goes up from a $3 million cap hit to about a $6.2 million cap hit for Trey Lance. So all of a sudden, business got more expensive in 2021 for the 49ers when they made all these maneuvers. So long story short, they have been able to do the limbo, find their way under the cap, and still potentially have enough room to pick up Julio Jones if they're able to do some deft financial maneuvering. Maybe the Falcons pick up part of the contract. But given all the moving pieces, the 49ers can't just keep on signing guys, especially a player like Richard Sherman, who's probably going to want at least a little bit more than the league minimum. It's going to be really hard to get Richard Sherman on a veteran salary exception like the 49ers got for so many other players. So given that, the 49ers just they have to maintain flexibility in case an opportunity like Julio Jones arises, and they can't sign Richard Sherman yet. I think there's interest from both sides based on some of the conversations that I had. But if the 49ers are going to reunite with Richard Sherman, and they could still definitely use a third, fourth cornerback, and I think Sherman obviously could prove himself in camp and start again. But depth wise, the 49ers would love to have a guy that could go in there, mentor Ambry Thomas, and work with Diamodur Leonard. I think it would work really well because they're not particularly strong opposite Jason Verrett. You can't really say that Emmanuel Mosley is a star. They just can't do it financially right now. So if it's going to happen, it's going to happen a little bit later. Fortunately for the 49ers, a lot of other teams, I think, are in a similar boat. And that's why the Richard Sherman market has been pushed back and pushed back and pushed back. But he's definitely a guy that's going to sign somewhere before training camp starts. It's just going to happen later in the offseason. Let's move on to Jeff's question here. Has it ever happened before that a team couldn't that a team couldn't sign their draft class because of the cap? If Atlanta doesn't move Jones or Jarrett, what would happen to their 2021 class? Well, if you can't sign the guy, then he's not under contract with you. And I don't think that's ever happened. I think that they probably would trim fat elsewhere to actually make that happen because it just doesn't make sense from a strategic standpoint to give up a player with 4 years of team control, right? And that's cost control because those rookie contracts are all locked in. You would rather cut a veteran. You could save some money with the veteran than the rookie who's on that fresh contract with 4 years of team control. That's why they say the NFL is a younger man's league. It's because you always have these rookies come in, and the teams have much more efficient cost control over these players for 4 years. Even a guy who's in his second year only has 3 more years of cost control. So you in that situation, you're going to favor the younger guy. So I don't think that's ever happened. I think teams always will part ways with a particular veteran to make room for the younger players. In the case of the 1994 49ers that I was saying earlier, they had like $39 of cap space at one point. I wrote about that in my big 49ers Cowboys feature. Actually, while we have our $1 sale going on, why don't I share that with you? Because we only have a few days of that left. And I know I've had some new followers here over the past few months, and I would love to share some of my long form work with you, especially while it only cost $1. Because this was fun stuff. I got to write about the 49ers Cowboys rivalry and just how little salary cap space the 49ers had. They ultimately parted with Bill Romanowski because they would rather sign Bryant Young and all the young guys. And the NFL has maintained the same philosophy ever since. So I don't know exactly what would happen if you didn't sign your draft class. Like if those guys would revert back to, I guess they would revert to waivers and teams could claim them. That's a really good question that I think we may never know the answer to because I don't think it will ever be put into practice. Anyway, a little segue here. Let me paste the link. This is the article. You click on that link. It's Center Stage, Reliving the Revolutionary Cowboys 49ers Rivalry of the 1990s. I had so much fun writing this piece back last September. It came out on September 30th. I mean, I worked on this piece for months. The headlining picture, as you can see, is Jerry Rice and Deion Sanders. The story's like 7,000 words long, but I got to talk to Steve Young, Carmen Policy, Troy Aikman. I mean, players, Jimmy Johnson, players, executives, coaches on both sides of the greatest rivalry of all time. I mean, the NFC Championship game in January 1995, so that was the 1994 season, the one the 49ers finally won against Dallas, is literally the most star-studded football game of all time. You had 21 Pro Bowlers, 19 All-Pros, 10 future Hall of Famers, the NFL's all-time leading receiver in Jerry Rice, and the NFL's eventual all-time leading rusher in Emmitt Smith, all on the same field for the same game. It is absolutely never going to happen again because of the salary cap, which came out that season. So the 49ers found a way to squeeze themselves under the salary cap, but we'll never see two teams as talented as the 49ers and Cowboys were in 1994 square off again. So that's why I had to write about it. And I'm going to find out the salary cap detail that was important there, right here. The 49ers policy said the 49ers were able to scrounge up enough money to pay their 1994 draft class only because they traded linebacker Bill Romanowski to Philadelphia dot off season. And some of the rookies that they ended up signing were Bryant Young, fullback William Floyd, and linebacker Lee Woodall. All three of whom became pretty good players for the 49ers. Carmen Policy's great quote was, "That's what it was all about in 1993 and 1994. We were literally dancing through raindrops." And I feel that that's what the Atlanta Falcons are doing right now, dancing through raindrops. And that's why Julio Jones, it might not be long for the Falcons. They are actively shopping him, seeing what they can get. Here it is, the exact number. 1.94 offseason, the 49ers had only $432 of cap space, with several players still unsigned. So they had to do some crazy stuff that year to get under the cap, and they've had to do some maneuvering since then to get under the cap. More questions. An extension this year for Warner would be right out without further restrictions on the current roster to bring in Julio Jones. Oh yeah, absolutely. An extension for Warner would, bump up his cap hit from $3 million to at least $7 million. So you have to budget at least $4 million for that, and obviously you'd have to budget money for Julio Jones coming in, which is why with the 49ers having $11 million right now, they have enough for Warner as it stands right now. I think a Julio Jones deal to be feasible for the 49ers would probably involve the Falcons picking up some of it. I think his base salary is $15 million or whatever it is this season. So you need Atlanta to take like $5 million of that. And Atlanta still benefits from that because they have $10 million freed up, right? But the 49ers only then spend $10 million on Julio this year, which leaves them with $1 million. I know that's not a lot, but that gives you at least room to operate a little bit of restructure. Maybe you take part of Jimmy Garoppolo's deal, turn it into signing bonus, open up that cap space. If you're sure Garoppolo is going to be around now for 2021, you could do that. Then you can extend Fred Warner, get everything done. Again, that's a really creative way. Maybe it's a slightly dangerous way, but I think it's fairly safe of building a bridge until 2022, 2023, then the cap explodes. So my Julio Jones trade proposal is one in which you get creative, and you have to, and you're counting on the cap exploding with a new TV deal in 2023. When will there be official updates on Dee Ford and Jalen Hurts? That will be next week. So OTAs for the 49ers, that's phase 3 of the offseason. Those begin next week. I will be at the facility on Tuesday at Levi Stadium. And I think we're going to have some Dee Ford and Jalen Hurts updates then. I can't wait to be out on the practice field, all the players out there. 49ers have 80-plus guys. Most of the team has reported, even though you're seeing around the league that's not necessarily a thing with all the teams around the league, with some of these offseason programs being really pared down. 49ers have decided to go full blast with OTAs. The players didn't come in and complain and try to negotiate some kind of shortened offseason program, which I think is cool. That means that we get to see more of the 49ers this offseason. I think Kyle Shanahan and the staff has to be really happy about that. And we're more likely to get a good Dee Ford and Jalen Hurts update because of it next week, because everybody's at the facility already right now for phase 2. Phase 3 is where it really picks up. And, everybody's going to want that side-by-side video of Trey Lance and Jimmy Garoppolo. So that's going to be, the money shot there next week, and we'll see how that goes. Is there a reason why the 49ers waived Marquise Lee after signing him a week ago? Yeah, I mean, they're seeing health-wise, it's all an extended tryout. Marquise Lee was never guaranteed a spot on the 49ers roster. So it's a situation where he came in at rookie minicamp, was one of the 5 players that they tried out. And they, it's hard to get enough intel in one weekend, especially if only the rookies are around. Well, then all 80 players show up. You're starting to run more drills. You're starting to run, different stuff. You have a longer look at Marquise Lee. And 4 days later, the 49ers decided that he wouldn't have a chance of making their 53-man roster. So they waived Lee and they brought in Benny Fowler instead. And, not much of an upgrade, in my opinion. Benny Fowler has also dealt with some injury issues over the last couple of years, probably not as severe as Marquise Lee's, but he's going to turn 30 in a couple of weeks. has never had more than 29 catches in a single season. So I think that, Benny Fowler's chances of making the 53-man roster aren't any higher than Marquise Lee's, which brings us back to Julio Jones. I mean, the 49ers still need another receiver. I think, this is something that was obvious to people during the draft, and now all of a sudden it doesn't seem to be so obvious to people anymore. I mean, they didn't improve at receiver, and they still need one more guy. I mean, Kendrick Bourne was a valuable member of this team. He made some key catches. He was that number 3 guy. You still need one more body to make this offense, I think. I don't want to say indestructible, but you make this offense a juggernaut if you pick up a really quality wideout to add into that room. If it's a guy like Julio, it drops Deebo Samuel down to that wide receiver 3 spot. Deebo Samuel would be a pretty good third wide receiver for the 49ers. So that's absolutely why they should be considering this. I'm not saying it's likely. I'm not saying that Atlanta is going to pull the trigger, but Atlanta is obviously interested. And I think based on what Kyle Shanahan has said before, the 49ers are interested too. Trade Kyle Pitts to the 49ers. I like that. That would be a full circle moment in the offseason. Anyway, yeah, that Cowboys article is right there. I linked it. You could see my name on there, and 7,000 words. If you haven't checked out The Athletic yet, the long form feature stuff is some of the favorite work that I get to put out, and that's going to be $1 a month right now. I think for another few days you can take advantage of that $1 a month deal. So please do check us out. It's great connecting with everybody on YouTube, but it's even more fun when we're connected on several platforms, including The Athletic, where I put out most of my work. There's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears that goes into those articles. Can you provide statistics on 3 wide receiver sets the 49ers ran? I also can't see them wanting Samuel and Ayuk off the field much. They are dangerous in different ways compared to Julio Jones. Yeah, I mean, I could provide statistics, not off the top of my head, but I'll be writing pieces this offseason. Another reason to check us out at The Athletic, and we'll get that up there. The second part of your question, I guess not a question, just your opinion there. Yes, I agree. They want those 2 guys on the field at the same time. Obviously, they don't want them off the field much, but anytime that we start talking, in those terms about, they already have too many guys in the running back room, now they have too many guys in the wide receiver room, this would create too much of a logjam. We're ignoring, by default in these situations, the fact that injuries happen in the NFL. Injuries really happen to the 49ers because they've got some receivers that are built for yards after the catch, especially a guy like Deebo Samuel. The guy runs heavy. The guy invites contact. And hey, let's face it, the guy got hurt last year. The guy missed a lot of games last year, and it was an issue for the 49ers, especially that Thursday night game against Green Bay, where I think Brandon Ayuk was on the COVID list. All of a sudden, Richie James is your top receiver. The point here is that it's never a problem to have too many quality bodies at any position, especially at running back, of course, which is why the 49ers now are really stocked there. That's going to work itself out. Okay, yeah, maybe they do trade somebody there in training camp. But I think, unfortunately, and this is not me wishing that it's going to happen, this is just me saying the reality of the situation. Unfortunately, somebody's going to get banged up, and it's probably going to happen in camp. And probably the 49ers' decision is going to be made for them in that running back room about which of the guys to carry. It's not going to be, in the offseason, we have all these hypotheticals. It's like, what are they going to do now with Wayne Gallman? Where does Elijah Mitchell go? Gallman versus Mitchell. It probably won't even come down to that by the time that September rolls around because of the nature of the sport, because guys get beaten up. And you don't want to run into a situation that the 49ers ran into last season against the Packers where they had no top-level running backs and they had no top-level receivers. So I wouldn't worry about, if they get Julio, Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk will have to come off the field. That's the problem you want to have. If you have way too many weapons, if you have a George Kittle, you have Julio Jones, you have Brandon Ayuk, you have Deebo Samuel, and you have to start thinking about which guy to yank off the field, that means you're a healthy football team with a lot of all pros and a lot of Pro Bowlers on the field. And that means you're probably going to win the Super Bowl. So again, it's just like the people who complain about the potential issue if Jimmy Garoppolo leads the 49ers to a Super Bowl. I mean, what issue is that? If Jimmy Garoppolo leads the 49ers to a Super Bowl and they win it this next season, that doesn't sound like a problem to me. That sounds like a made up, conjured problem. It's not a real problem. The goal is to have as much talent as possible producing on the field. And if that happens, you cross that bridge when you get to it. You deal with the roster issues when you get to them. The 49ers certainly aren't at that spot yet. That's far away, and I think 49ers fans should appreciate that, given the fact their roster was completely wiped out by injuries last year. Do you expect Jawan Jennings to play much this season? We'll see. I can't wait to see Jawan Jennings at OTAs. He's back involved. He was at the rookie mini camp. Now I want to see him working against some veteran coverage. He got a tough break last season with the injuries. So I was high on Jawan Jennings coming out of Tennessee. I know a lot of people were. He's not fast, but the guy's physical, and he's a grinder. He's got some nasty in him. He can block, and I really think that he fits what the 49ers try to do. I think he needs to stay healthy so he could actually compete, and we'll see how he looks at OTAs. So I'll have an opinion on that next week. Which camp battles are you looking forward to most, and which vets are at risk of losing a roster spot? Ooh, that's a good one. I'm going to have to go through my 53-man roster projection. Let's do that right now. I'm going to link that for you too. A little break from talking as well. What's everybody having for lunch today? It's almost noon on the West Coast. I have to get the 53-man roster projection out so you can tell me what you're having for lunch as I look for this. Okay, yeah. So here's my 49ers 53-man roster projection, and you can, again, $1 a month, sign up through there. This is my girlfriend's house. So thanks. I'll let her know. These are cow print pillows. Somebody said nice crib. So yeah, it is nice. It's air conditioned, comfortable, good internet. That's important. Although the other day it cut out because she's working in the back office and working from home, and she kicked the Wi-Fi router while I was doing my YouTube live talking about Ambry Thomas, and Wi-Fi just cut out. So it cut out at a good time because I was about to transition to Trey Sermon, and I'm going to do a separate YouTube live to talk about Trey Sermon. Today's is about Julio Jones and all this. Anyway, there's the 53-man roster. I want to answer the question about the 53-man roster and which veterans the 49ers might cut. I'll go through this by position, if that's okay. If you click on that too, one of the things I've tried to do this offseason, for those who are new to The Athletic or new to following me, I have these spreadsheets that are pretty fun. I like using them. It helps me keep track of the 49ers 53-man projection, their 90-man roster, and also I have a separate one for the salary cap to see how expensive any particular 53-man roster would be. And that's suddenly really relevant with all this Julio Jones stuff, because you can see exactly where the 49ers would have to save money to be able to fit Julio Jones. And also within the context of making the 53-man roster, all of a sudden it makes a lot more sense to see how the draft picks slot in. So if you click on that link, you can actually open the spreadsheets and you can mess with the sheets yourself if you want to play GM. I think that's been a kind of a cool addition to the offseason coverage. I hope people are enjoying that, because building an NFL roster is a really complicated thing. You have all these Twitter GMs, all these, even writers are saying, how easy it is. They should do this, they should do that. There's a reason I don't hop on every single rumor and say, the 49ers should sign him, they should draft him, because it's hard to fit guys into these rosters and have it make sense from a team-wide standpoint, which includes a special team standpoint. The reason I'm bullish about this Julio Jones possibility is because Kyle Shanahan himself has said that this is an opportunity that needs to be examined at all costs. I don't care if that was 3 years ago. Julio Jones is still a good player right now. And B, there is a definite spot on the 49ers roster for Julio Jones to fit into. They still need another wideout. So, they'd be foolish not to consider this if it is indeed possible. So going through the position groups, if you go to that 53-man roster, veterans in danger of being cut, Josh Rosen, Nate Sudfeld. I don't think Nate Sudfeld's going to be, gone completely. I think he's going to be their practice squad quarterback at the very least. And given the fact that Garoppolo and Lance are QBs 1 and 2, I think at quarterback, that 3 spot is open. I think they're definitely going to carry 3 this year. So I think you see Rosen and Sudfeld battling it out for that third quarterback spot. And Sudfeld has $252,000 guaranteed, which is actually the veteran minimum for the practice squad, which tells me that they have some offset language in his deal that says, hey, even if we cut you, we want you back on the practice squad. We're guaranteeing you that much money for the season. So Sudfeld's going to be in the room, certainly, I think, this season. The question is he going to be in the room as QB3 or the practice squad QB? Where a veteran might get cut is running back, because they signed Wayne Gallman, who I really like. But if they end up really liking Elijah Mitchell, and if everybody stays healthy in that running back room, it's going to be hard to fit Wayne Gallman on this team. So he's a guy that's going to be on the bubble, health permitting, for the rest of the team. At receiver, you might see some veterans cut, or at least one. Travis Benjamin, who opted out of the last season. If obviously, if you bring in a guy like Julio Jones, that's going to move other guys down the pecking order. So Mohamed Sanu, Travis Benjamin, those are two players who are not guaranteed spots on this 53-man roster at receiver. Tight ends, everybody's making it that could be a position the 49ers still bulk up. You look at tight end, it wouldn't surprise me if the 49ers try to find a way to acquire a player like Zach Ertz if a player like Julio Jones doesn't work out, because tight end is where the pass catching abilities still seem a little bit thin. It goes from Kittle down to Ross Dwelly and Charlie Warner. That's a big drop off after George Kittle, and we know how much Kyle Shanahan likes that two tight end set. I think at offensive line, you might see some casualties. I actually, in my current 53-man roster projection, I have Justin School on the outside looking in. I have Sean Coleman on the outside looking in. Those are two veterans, obviously, that I think a few months ago you would have projected to make the 49ers roster, but they've invested so much in the offensive line. I got a big piece coming out on Aaron Banks and Jalen Moore on Monday, by the way. They've invested so much in the offensive line that somebody's not going to make the team, right? Injury permitting, of course. But in my opinion, Colton McKivitt's only been around for a year. He didn't play well last year, but I think the 49ers really believe that he'll turn it around in year two, or they believe he should have a chance to, at least, because he was a rookie during a compromised 2020 season, didn't have an offseason program. Fine. They'll give Colton McKivitz another year to prove himself. But Justin School, he's already had 2 seasons. So if there's a lineman in there, they have to push out to fit Jalen Moore, to fit Aaron Banks, to fit Alex Mack, who's going to be on this team. Who's it going to be? You're not going to kick Brunskill off the team. Brunskill is a very valuable utility piece who's played well for him. I think it's going to be a guy like Justin School, Tom Compton. I think that goes without saying. On the defensive line, Kentavious Street, I think, is in line to be a veteran cut. I just don't see the room for a guy who's best playing on the interior on a roster that now includes Zach Kerr, who was quietly one of the better defensive tackles in football and limited action for Carolina last year. You have Maurice Hurst, who was a good player for the Raiders. Obviously, Javon Kinlaw in his second season, and DJ Jones having been re-signed. I don't know where there's room for Kentavious Street, especially, since he seemed to be kind of a tweener. Nobody was really sure where he would excel most at. You saw him on the inside. You saw him on the outside. He was better on the inside. He wasn't really good at either spot. I just don't see where there's room for him. And, speaking of interior players, Kevin Givens, his court date for that misdemeanor assault charge, that's on May 26th. That's next week. So I'll be monitoring that, and we'll see if that ends up impacting his roster status with the 49ers. I don't see any real veteran linebackers getting cut. I think Nate Jerry makes the team. I think they think he's a fast linebacker, pick up out of Philadelphia. He'll be good on special teams, so I don't see that happening. And then at cornerback, if they do have that Richard Sherman reunion, then a player like Dante Johnson, I think, gets cut. I think they carry 6 corners. That includes the nickel backs. Maybe they only carry 5, but in my initial projection, I have them carrying 6, with Dante Johnson being the 6th. And that gives you an idea of, hey, if there still is cap room toward the end of the offseason and Richard Sherman's still available, why not have Richard Sherman on the team instead of Dante Johnson? I think, I don't have to explain why, but that's a situation where Sherman might be able to fit onto the roster. And then at safety, Tavon Wilson is a guy who think they may cut. Some people think Marcel Harris's job isn't safe. It just depends on how many safeties and cornerbacks they take. But if Talanoa Hufanga makes the team, obviously not guaranteed, when you're looking at a fifth round draft pick, but I think I think he's very likely going to make the team. That means you're looking at least one veteran cut out of those safeties. So that's a long answer to one of the questions. I'm going to answer one more because I'm already at 35 minutes. Is the longest one I've ever done. But they're easy to do. These are fun. I hope you guys enjoy these as we're talking about Julio Jones and the 49ers roster. Do we have any reason to believe that Julio Jones will stay healthy? Yeah, his entire career. I mean, he's generally stayed healthy his entire career, dealt with a hamstring issue, still fought through it, played 9 good games in 2020. Here's the thing. The 49ers traded 2 draft picks for a 32-year-old Emmanuel Sanders, who was nowhere near as good as Julio Jones is now at age 32. So why wouldn't they trade 2 draft picks for a 32-year-old Julio Jones? And they were only getting half a season of a 32-year-old Emmanuel Sanders at the time. They would get 3 years of team control of Julio Jones, and then they would be essentially able to decide what to do after this 2021 season in case they felt that he was starting to fall off a cliff. And there is no indication that Julio Jones is starting to fall off a cliff. Yes, that hamstring injury may be correlated with the age. I get it. But efficiency-wise, he's still a star. He's still one of the best guys in all of football. And he's been available throughout most of his career. You can actually bank on Julio Jones being healthy more than you could bank on some of these rookies. Because these rookies, these young guys that come in, you don't know how they're going to respond to the NFL, how they're going to respond to the 17-game season, how they're going to respond to making contact with bigger bodies. You just don't know, which is why a lot of these rookies don't end up panning out in the NFL. Julio Jones is a proven commodity. And if the point of using draft picks or saving draft picks is to pick up good players, to turn them into good players through the draft, well, you're reaching the same objective, right? If you're turning it into a great player with Julio Jones, which is why this is absolutely on the table for the 49ers. And the thing that might hold it up is financial feasibility. And I'm upfront with that. It's probably unlikely the 49ers trade for Julio Jones because it's not financially feasible and they would have to do some maneuvering to make it happen. But you go back to Kyle Shanahan's quote, you try to find a way to make it work because it's Julio Jones. So let's see if the 49ers are able to find a way to make it work. Do we see more power given the running backs and offensive linemen we added this offseason? Yes, sir. We will see some power this season. Let me share my Trey Sherman article, okay? Because this is an answer to your question. And this is how I'm going to leave you with this. That's the Trey Sherman piece. $1 a month, sign up. Trey Sherman's a bruiser. I mean, the guy's been called the Terminator since he was 5 years old on the football field. The 49ers got bigger linemen between Aaron Banks, who was 338 pounds at the Senior Bowl, and Jalen Moore, who can play comfortably up to 320 pounds. I mean, these are big size upgrades over what they had in the past. Now, these guys can still move, which is why the 49ers got them. But I think the 49ers are going to be more multiple in their running attack. That article on Trey Sherman, and we can't, not discuss Elijah Mitchell, who also runs really physically. I think the 49ers are going to get downhill. They're not going to abandon the outside zone, but I think you have to adapt to the league, right? The league is getting faster and faster and faster, especially on defense, because they're trying to counter the offensive speed that Shanahan has really highlighted. Coaches like Shanahan and his tree have really made offenses faster over the last 10 years. So defenses are now adjusting to that. And what's happening? Defenses are getting lighter as a result. Tacklers are getting worse at their craft. So what do? You turn around and you smack them right where it hurts. And that means running downhill and challenging teams as far as their inability to tackle. And the 49ers have done this in the pass game to great success. They lead the league in yak in large part, yards after the catch, by the way, in case you don't know what yak is, but they lead the league in yards after the catch in large part because they have guys like Deebo Samuel, guys like George Kittle, real bruisers who take advantage of the fact that tackling is a lost art form. All these defenses are built for speed, but they aren't built for tackling. So the 49ers have punished teams in the open field in yards after the catch. I think they're now trying to do the same thing in the run game with players like Trey Sherman, good zone runner, Elijah Mitchell, good zone runner. but also not afraid to run people over. So read the article on Trey Sermon. Read the article about Julio Jones, read the article about the Cowboys. I put 3 links in there. Again, The Athletic is $1 a month, and you get to read all of this stuff. You're locked into that $1 a month rate. If you get us now, just sign up through one of my articles on there. Through those links, there's no red tape. You can cancel anytime, but I swear to God, $1 a month is the most in-depth 49ers coverage out there. And I started doing these YouTube live videos just to get that out there for you guys. So get on those links. Hopefully I answered your questions. Maybe the 49ers pick up Julio Jones. They probably don't, but hey, it's worth talking about. I hope everybody has a great weekend. Thanks for joining this one. Enjoy the rest of your Fridays. Peace out.